Hello, everybody. Welcome to your full moon reading on June 5th, 2020. This is the strawberry moon, but we are in a partial lunar eclipse. So there's some very intense energies out there. I thought we'd look into some of them with the Crow Tarot tonight. I'm actually really in love with this deck. I purchased it recently and I did a little bit of a modification on it. I decided to use a Sharpie to edge it in black, which I think looks really, really nice with the card backs, which I have to say I really love the design. This deck has really surprised me. It's quite a profound little deck, and wasn't that I was necessarily a big fan of crows per se. I mean, I love all animals, and I actually really do like animal oracles and anything animal themed, but this little deck definitely has proven to be much more sophisticated than I ever anticipated. So it's a really fun deck, and I'm really enjoying using it. So we're gonna use this as our tarot deck, and then I thought we would do also an oracle pull as well from the Queen of the Moon oracle deck, and perhaps maybe something from Moonology oracle cards. And there's another new deck that I just recently got. It's called the Magic of You oracle. And it's also pretty intense in terms of the messages are very much, this is a really great deck to use for shadow work. And for some reason, I just feel very drawn to it tonight. I think it might be appropriate for working with this particular reading. So I'm just going to follow my gut instincts and my intuition, my third eye, and just do a general reading for the collective. I'm a little bit behind. I try to post a video once a week. At least I just started my channel a few weeks ago, and that's typically what my intention was to post at least once a week, some kind of a reading, until I started to get into the flow and know how I wanted to move forward with my channel. But I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I did not post last week because, quite frankly, I was very affected by the energies and everything that's going on in the world. And I really feel a responsibility to not get on here and do any kind of reading, even though, disclaimer, this is not for everyone, and it's certainly for entertainment purposes, and if you find something that you resonate with, great, but not everyone will resonate with readings, especially readings that are geared towards the collective. And it's not meant to give you absolutes in your life. So this is a tool to help you get in touch with your subconscious mind. It's a tool that can help you connect to spirit, but it is certainly not in replacement for your own intuition and your own good sense and logic. Okay, with that disclaimer said, I will say that, getting back to my ethical issue, as a reader, my job is to be a clear source for messages to come through. And if I'm going through my own turmoil, then I have a responsibility to get my channel cleaned up before I do any kind of a reading for the collective or for any group. So that's why I sort of disappeared for a week. I was feeling a lot of heaviness, a lot of heavy energy, and I needed to cycle through my own stuff and ground, and then come back to this when I felt that I was in better control. So so that's where we are. And I will say that those of you who are experiencing a lot of heaviness right now, I want you to know that I think that that's completely normal. This is a very intense full moon. We have a lot of planets in retrograde, and in fact, on the 24th of June, we're going to have the most planets in retrograde I think we've had in a long time. Don't quote me on this because I'm not an astrologer, but I believe it's something like 9 planets will be in retrograde. So that means anytime anything is in retrograde, it means reflecting, looking back, reassessing, reevaluating. And when you're talking about 9 planets that are retrograding, whew, that's a lot of reflection. That's a lot of work to dig into within ourselves. So be prepared for a month of, a lot of insights. Some may be very uncomfortable, but I think it's also the potential for a lot of growth too. So we have to always look for, when things feel low, we always have to go high. And what's the spiritual message here? And, we can't get anywhere without looking back a little bit. We can't move forward without looking back and learning from the past. So let's see what the cards have to say tonight for the collective for this full moon in June 5th of 2020. Okay, we've got the Page of Wands. We've got the 5 of Swords in reverse. And we've got the King of Swords. So, interesting. Pages always bring us news. They bring us messages. They're messengers. And if you look at the image of this crow in this card, he or she is definitely making their voice heard. So this to me means that we've got a lot of activity going on right now with getting messages out there. And I think that's very much in line with everything that's been going on this week in the climate of the entire United States, of course, but, also around the world. A lot of voices are out there trying to get their messages out. And so there's a lot of activity. When I look at this card, I also see what's really interesting is, I don't know if you can see, but to me it looks like there's some psychic eyes here, kind of embedded in this design that the crow is on. And this is the Ace of Wands. And so the wands are obviously a suit of fire. They represent fire, the element of fire. It's a fiery energy. Very impassioned words, impassioned messages and speeches, and a lot to do with trying to activate change. So if we look at this next card, which is the 5 of Swords in reverse, well, I think there's something positive about this card. Swords, represent the element of air. They're about communicating ideas, but swords, as a general rule, as a suit, can be a little bit rough. They have sometimes very rough lessons to teach us. And 5s are generally a number of conflict. And in this particular card, if it were sitting straight up, you would see that we've got a couple of different, a few different birds here. One has got 2 swords and the other ones are kind of flying away. In the reverse position, it's sort of symbolizing that the conflict is starting to disperse a little bit. It's starting to die down. And I'm actually really encouraged by this card because up until, just yesterday, I really felt like, wow, when is the unrest going to end? It felt very, it just was very, I don't know, I really don't know how to describe it other than that it was just a very heavy energy. It was a lot of heavy energy. And, but this encourages me into thinking that perhaps some of the conflict is starting to die down a little bit, and people are starting to pick up the pieces. They're starting to listen to each other. They're starting to see, what is it that we're really fighting for. And, the battle is sort of over. The initial battle, let's say, maybe not the war, but the initial battle is over. And, so, and some of the warriors are leaving the scene. So so I think that this is a positive thing that we're seeing the Five of Swords in the reverse position. We move on to the King of Swords. So the King of Swords is typically a representation of a very strong masculine energy. But it could be feminine. It depends on the reading. I don't particularly see this as one person. I feel like this card represents a collective energy. And in this case, I would say that this is a very strategic, logical king energy. This is an energy that is about taking methodical steps and processes. Something where we're in a place where we're figuring out solutions on how we can benefit the collective, everyone, the group. This is not a power-hungry leader. This is a clear and prudent vision of success to a situation. And I'm actually, to be honest with you guys, as I'm doing this reading, I'm actually feeling a lot better. I mean, I did a big grounding and ceremony tonight to clear my energy, meditation. I cast some prayers and spells, positive things, and, work some magic, set some very positive intentions. And I have to be honest, I mean, I'm doing this reading literally on the night of the full moon, and earlier this morning when I pulled my own personal reading, considering what was going on, when I do a reading for myself, I often, say, what are the outside influences, which tend to be what's going on in the world around me. And it was much more dire and negative. This has definitely turned a corner. We're turning a corner. And I think I can go to bed feeling a lot more peace tonight than I did in nights past, because it really feels to me like there's been some movement and shifts for the positive, which is great. It seems like voices were heard. People were dropping the battle gear, and now we're getting into some very grounded, pragmatic solutions. So this is a very positive. It's a very positive forecast. So let's keep our fingers crossed that Spirit is sending us a very accurate message. Let's do a little bit more work with the Oracle deck, because I don't want to make this a very, very long reading. And I also want to remind you guys that any kind of energy from a full moon or a new moon, it's not just on one evening or one day. Obviously, the energies are strongest when the full moon is at 100%, but the energies will last for a couple of days prior to the full moon and a couple of days after. So energies are always strong for at least a week when we're experiencing the moon at one of these pivotal stages, which is, at the full or at the new moon. But keep in mind that this particular moon is like a moon on full moon on steroids. Whenever we have a lunar eclipse happening, and this one isn't even a full one, from what I understand, it's a partial lunar eclipse, but nevertheless, because of all of the other planetary action going on out there, it's definitely supercharged. Okay. All right, so let's see. Well, how interesting is that? The new moon in Cancer. And we are in Gemini season, but we are not far away from Cancer season. It's right around the corner. And look at the message on the card. You and your loved ones are safe. New moon in Cancer. I can't make this stuff up. This to me is a very positive message that by the new moon, we're going to be in a completely different place, and people are going to start to feel a sense of relief, and peace is going to start to feel restored. And I got to tell you, I think that is just flippin' fantastic, because as a collective, we have all been through the ringer since the coronavirus started. It's just been a wild ride. 2020 has been quite the year. So this is like, a breath of fresh air. So I'm very encouraged, very, very encouraged by that. I might have to bring this up a little bit, maybe, so that we can get a better view. Let's move on to the Magic of You Oracle. This might be able to give us a very specific sort of message for the collective in terms of our shadow sides, or maybe an energy that we need to tweak or work with as we're going through the processing the energies of this full moon in Sagittarius right now. I just edged these in a really nice emerald green to kind of match the box. I would have liked more of a hunter green, but at the time I didn't have that, and obviously my crafting tools are limited by what Amazon can deliver within a time frame, and I could not wait. So rather than ordering more markers, I just used a marker that I had. But I've edged some decks lately, and I've been really happy with the result. And I actually think that the brighter green kind of pops a little bit. So for those of you who are tarot enthusiasts and like to personalize your decks with edging and trimming, I've been a little bit mad doing that lately. I'm feeling very drawn to this card. Translucence. Love the darkness. And look at that. We've got another crow. Can you see that? Amazing. This one I'm going to have to refer to the book on, because it's a new deck. I just got it this month, and so I haven't been using it that much to really know all the messages of the cards. But let's take a look and see what this deck what this particular card, Translucence, has to say. Well, love the darkness right then and there. I can tell you that it's about embracing all of what we have been experiencing collectively as a group. It's entering the underworld here. And it's pushing beyond superficial, which to me means pushing beyond the 3D world. You know, I got to tell you guys, the only way I could get out of my own personal funk was to reconnect to spirit, to reconnect to source. And, you know, it's funny because for someone like myself who tries to be very mindful about that, and I would not say I'm a religious person, I'm a spiritual person. And I really have stepped up my spirituality in the last few years. I mean, I've always been spiritual, but in terms of being consistent with my spiritual practices, even just, you know, doing this channel was sort of like a nod to spirit. It was a way for me to show to myself and to my guides and stuff that I was listening, and that I was going to be living with guidance from now on, and not denying my own intuition and not denying my connection to source. So for someone who's trying to go that path, I have to say that, you know, there are certainly times where I disconnect and I forget that that when I'm really, really down, I just need to go deeper within myself. I just need to, you know, I love that expression, you know, when they go low, you go high. And I think there's different variations of how to say that. But in essence, you know, it's like when energies feel dark and low and slimy, and you have that yucky feeling, or you get depressed and you're like, is this my energy, or am I picking up on everybody else's energy? The only real way out of that state of mind, believe it or not, is to honor it. Honor that you feel that way. Honor that you're not sure where it's coming from, and just sit with it and go into it and delve into it. Go into the dark side, you know, go into that shadow. I mean, I'm not obviously saying, when I say go into the dark side, I don't mean act out on anything towards other people. I mean within yourself, because it is a sign from spirit that you need to reconnect. You need to reconnect with source. And this card personifies Persephone, the goddess of springtime that was abducted by Hades and taken down into the underworld to be his bride. And she was the daughter of Demeter, who was the goddess of harvest and grain and corn, and what we would consider Mother Earth in Greek mythology. And when she was abducted by Hades and she got stuck in the underworld, she had to spend 6 months of the year in the underworld with Hades, and 6 months of the year she was able to be returned to her mother on Earth. So therefore, that's the myth that explains how we got the change of seasons. So when it's spring and summer, and the Earth is alive and blooming and abundant, Persephone is with her mother, and her mother is happy. She's relieved that her daughter, her precious daughter, is with her again. When she goes down into the underworld, that's when things start to die on the earth, because Demeter is in mourning and sad, and she allows the earth to have its cycle of death, and we go into fall and winter. And for those of you who are familiar with the myth, the reason why Persephone ends up having to keep this contract with Hades and stay in the underworld and be the queen of the underworld for 6 months of the year is because she ate 6 seeds of a pomegranate in the underworld. And whenever you eat something within the underworld, that means that you are bound to that realm. So those 6 seeds were representative of her having to spend 6 months in the underworld with Hades. So we've got Persephone here in this card personified, and one of the things that this card says, which is really interesting, and I'm going to read this because this is a new take on the myth. So it says that it's in the Greek myth, it's said that she was stolen by Hades, but this is not true. And this is what the card says. A goddess that powerful would never have been stolen. In a matriarchal society, she would have been described as entering willingly and then deciding to have Hades as her partner. The Maiden of Translucence has her eyes closed. Like the Fool of the traditional tarot deck, this is the card signifying the beginning of life's next magical adventure. She is letting go, and her winged bird steed is preparing to plunge into the cracked earth opening up before them. The forest branches beckon, come this way. When translucence appears, it is also time to redefine your parameters, protect your sanctuary, and willingly take the journey into the unknown interverse of you. Willingly take the journey into the unknown interverse of you. Feathers are shedding, the hand is beckoning. Take the journey. This card is saying it is time to fall in love with the darkness. That's a very powerful message and very apropos. Cool little deck. I will put the names of all the decks that I'm using tonight in the descriptions below. And I have one more oracle deck that I want to pull from in honor of it being the full moon. And that is the Queen of the Moon oracle. I also edged this one in a silver color. This deck is actually also a very cool deck that was on my wish list on Amazon for quite some time. It's by Stacey DeMarco, and I like a lot of Stacey DeMarco's decks. I think she puts out some really cool stuff. So it's not my first one that I have of her. I'm feeling drawn. Sometimes I let the cards pop out, but sometimes I draw them. And I have a theory about that. Everybody is different. Every reader is different. I feel like whether you cut a deck and pull the cards yourself, or whether they fly out of the deck, they're both, you're being guided either way. Sometimes messages, come from spirit in a very fast and furious way. They want to get your attention, so they fly it out of the deck. Sometimes it's a little bit more of you sort of being in connection with spirit, and your will is also kind of part in taking the choice of what card to choose. Oh wow. And I saw this card come up in somebody else's reading recently this week. Surrender. Again, can't make this stuff up, guys. Well, I mean, there's really not much that I need to say about a card like this. We've got this monk here. He looks like a Buddhist monk to me. And he's out there in the night sky, and he is offering himself up and surrendering. Now, surrender does not mean give up. A lot of people have a difficult time with surrender because they don't really understand the intention behind it. And it really is more of letting go. And letting go of what's no longer needed, or what is holding you back from growth or from change. So stop being stubborn. Stop holding on to behaviors or belief systems that don't align with who you are, and just stop struggling and let the universe work through you. It takes a long time to master this, I believe, and I can only use my own personal experience as a reference to that. But I know for myself that it took me a really long time to understand that surrender or letting go was positive, because it was always painful for me. That partially, has to do with my personality, and I think it partially has to do with that I'm a Taurus with the Scorpio rising. So those are very fixed energies, and they're kind of badasses, and we tend to just get really stubborn. And I think my saving grace is the fact that I have my moon in Sag, which makes me a much more independent soul. So it balances out all of that energy, that Taurus and Scorpio energy. But anytime we want to better a situation, we typically have to let something go. It's sort of in line with the cycle of life, right? Nothing lasts forever. Change is inevitable. That's the one thing that we can count on in life is change. So rather than fighting against it and swimming against the current, we need to go with the flow and acknowledge that in order for something new to grow, like when you have a plant, right? And you want the plant to grow and get bigger so that you can repot it, you have to prune it. You have to cut back some of its leaves and its stems and allow for the new growth to bloom or to bud. And it's the same concept for us in our lives. We need to have a vulnerability, and surrender allows us to show that vulnerability. Surrender allows us to make the admission of when we've made a mistake or we've developed a bad habit, and that bad habit has been operating in our life. It helps us to have realizations, important realizations about what may not be good for us, or people that may not be good for us that we have to let go of. So this is definitely a card that tells us that letting go is a step towards having more control, believe it or not. I'm going to put these on either side here. So, wow. Pretty right on the money, I think. And encouraging, positive. I think we all need to work with these energies right now. Being able to love the darkness, accept what we're feeling right now, and allow it to be, to go within, to surrender, and also to know that we've got ways in which we can cope with all of this, and we're going to get through it. This too shall pass. So there you have it, guys. Please do me a favor and take care of yourselves this weekend. The energies are going to be strong, and a lot of self-care is really necessary right now. Know that when you practice self-care, you're not being selfish. You're actually improving the world, because when you are good within yourself, your energetic field creates an influence that can affect others. You can't really help other people if you're not right within your own heart. And that's, again, the reason why I am delayed in putting out any readings in the last week. I needed to get right within my own heart. You know, I needed to get centered and grounded so that whatever messages came through from Spirit, they were accurate. And so take that time with yourself. You know, if you need to take the weekend and just be alone, or whatever self-care means to you, it means different things to different people. Everybody needs something different. But do it. Really do it, because if we can all take care of ourselves, if we can all take responsibility for our own thoughts, our own actions, our own emotions, our own growth, our own ethics, our own way of operating in the world, without the influence of other people, then the world will be a much better place. I think that a lot of independent minds that are healthy is much better than any kind of group mentality. Group mentality can go awry. It can go off the rails. Mass hysteria, cults. I mean, I don't want to get into all of that stuff tonight, but if you work on you and you do you and you try to be the best that you can be, you are giving the world a gift. And if everybody does that, the vibration collectively goes up. So take that time this weekend to cycle through all of what's going on. And let's hope for better and brighter days. I thank you so much for joining me and for tuning into this reading. Please like and subscribe, and more is on the horizon. Okay, everybody, take care. Much love.